Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices, and my name is Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, and on the panel with me today are my co-hosts, Chris Dawkins and Caleb Alexander. We've had a lot happening this week, and we're going to circle back, if this is a circle back, and discuss birthright citizenship. But I want to take it back from the root of all, from the root of this, looking at the Dred Scott decision to where we are now. So before we get started, we want to thank our producer, Carl Booker, for having us on this show. And we also want to thank you, our listening audience. So, Dred Scott decision. I have to admit that when I was in school and I heard about it, the question was on the test, I picked the right answer and I moved on. But now, as to where we are now, I had to go back and look at really what this decision was and its applicability to today. So real quick, the Dred Scott decision, and it was formerly called Dred Scott versus Sanford in 1857, was a landmark and deeply controversial ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court that held that African Americans, whether enslaved or free, could not be considered citizens of the United States and therefore had no right to sue in federal court. And so the background of this is Dred Scott was an enslaved man who lived with his owner in free states and territories where slavery was prohibited. He sued for his freedom, arguing that his residence in free areas made him legally free. But the Supreme Court ruled that African Americans were not intended to be U.S. citizens under the Constitution, and Congress had no authority to ban slavery in U.S. territories, effectively declaring the Missouri Compromise of 1820 to be unconstitutional. And then enslaved people were considered property, depriving owners of their slaves in free territories. So as we look at it where we are now, the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment were put into place to abolish slavery and grant citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. So the 14th Amendment, we probably heard a lot about that. That's what it did. It naturalized anybody who was born in the United States. But just the other day, June 27th, the Supreme Court ruling did not directly overturn birthright citizenship, but it significantly altered how challenges to executive actions like Trump's order to restrict it can be handled in court. So where are we today? And I'm going to encourage everybody, and I'll talk about this later, that if you have not read Justice Ketanji Brown's dissent concerning this latest ruling, you need to read it and understand it, because the question now becomes, are we impacted by this as Black Americans?
Was it Ketanji Brown or was it Sotomayor who said you're taking away the rights of the people?
Yes, with both of them, yeah.
Okay.
Sotomayor said it, and then Ketanji Brown went ahead and really expanded.
So let me ask a question, and I think I asked you this before. With the Dred Scott decision, to correct that, somebody, I don't know who the somebody was, but they decided that they needed to make this trifecta of amendments to the Constitution to deal with that.
Right, and they're called the Reconstruction Amendments.
Okay.
There were three, the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment, and the 50th being, looking at civil rights.
But from my standpoint, there never was a retraction or revision on Dred Scott in the same way, let's say that they would have done abortion now and to say, you're not going to do abortion now, or we think that the old Supreme Court ruling was not the right ruling to make. So Dred Scott still stands on the books, right?
It's on the books.
So if Dred Scott still stands on the books and you have these amendments, then to me you somewhat have a conflict, which is going to allow the current administration to probably go back and say Dred Scott and the Supreme Court has already ruled that these individuals may not have the right.
Yeah, I think, and to your point, I think that was the gateway
Right.
that they looked through to even think about this. And I was listening to another YouTuber last night, or the last couple of nights, and he was really going into detail as to how this could impact, I'm going to say, free Black Americans such as ourselves in the long run. First of all, the Supreme Court went ahead and gave him immunity, okay?
Right.
And so the way the Supreme Court ruled the other day, it almost strengthened that immunity piece to where if he wakes up one day, he can easily say, you know, all Black Americans in California, since he's picking on California, you need to be gone by such and such a date.
And what it said is that a lower federal court cannot rule on an executive order from the president.
Well, what they said was they can't do any type of, well, that too, but they can't do a nationwide injunction.
Right.
So now,
So if he says the executive order that all Black people are to be removed, the lower court can't do anything. You got to take it to the Supreme Court and ask for a decision.
So the nationwide injunction piece was the other piece that Trump was crying about, talking about you can't do that. Okay, so they're saying you can't do that, but what happens is that this is where the have and the have-nots come into play. If I have the money and the time and can move quick to find me an attorney who can go before a judge, then that ruling does not apply to me. Now, you still, I'm saying you and Caleb are caught up in that executive order, but I can appeal for myself. So the way I'm understanding it is that there could be a civil rights case filed, or everything now has to be individually done.
Well, let's say this. Let's stick a pin in that right now, but I want to come back to that because I don't believe that necessarily would be true.
Okay. Well, we'll come right back, and he's going to really see what I know.